And now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Yvette Abraham, activist, scholar, stalwart of Afems, and Gabeba, Baderoon, poet, scholar, amazing feminist. Thank you to both of you for being here, and we are looking forward to the conversation between you. Yvette, I'll slide over to let you know when 20 minutes is up, and then we'll negotiate after that. Thank you. Can we put, where's our,
Shall I proceed to the mic?
can we put this on the,
Can you hear me from here? Gabeba, can you hear me?
I can.
oh, brilliant.
Yeah, that's it.
Then I'll just sit there.
Yay.
Sure. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
It's so wonderful to see you all and to listen to the conversation, which already is so provocative and fascinating.
Are you going to keep her turned around so she, okay. But will she be able to see us from there?
Actually, hi. Can we turn back to look at
Yeah.
the roof again?
Yes, yes, that's what I'm trying to.
Ah, we see you.
It was? Oh, I see. Oh, you're doing it different. Let's.
Maybe you could put the chair there.
Please, thank you.
Greetings, everybody. My heart is really full to see you all, and I'm so grateful to be in community with you and in conversation with Yvette. I want to say congratulations to Afems for its 5th anniversary. It's an amazing achievement, and it's really a continental achievement in my view. I really, and a global one. It's a beautiful thing that you have created, Linda and Charlene and everybody who's been involved. And thank you very much for allowing a conversation about a much earlier group, the Women of Color Consciousness Raising Group, which Yvette and I are going to talk about right now, to be part of Afems. And Yvette, you are the founder of the WCCR, and it has been over 25 years now since you first gathered us, and there has been an absence of discussion, a silence about this group, and this conversation, I hope, is one of many that will address that very interesting silence. Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay. So, Yvette, this is really a conversation between us rather than a presentation from me. And of course, there's also in the room Pumla Denotola, who's a central member of the WCCR, and I hope she also will be involved in the conversation. But let me open it by asking you, Yvette, to reflect from this perspective on what the WCCR means to you, speaking about it in 2023, and then I'll go into more technical, historical details of who was there, how it worked, why you started it. But if I can ask you from your vantage point now to reflect on what the group means to you, I was wondering, as the founder, if you could give us those opening words.
Thank you, Gabeba. And yes, I agree, Pumla. Please feel free to chime in. She is here, right? Yes. You're looking right at her. That's hilarious. I think 2023, Gabeba, is a beautiful time to do this work because we survived COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly we're elders. Like on my mother's side, I'm now the matriarch. And we're very young elders. I mean, to be the matriarch at 60 is really, it's a lot. But so it seemed to me to be so timeless that you decided to pick up this work, because for me, what it is, it's a reflection on our role as feminist elders, and that you thought of it. You know, we're all still so busy feministing, so you're still small voice saying, but hold up, you know, at what point are we going to recognize our contributions, which we never really sat down and did. I mean, because we're still so busy doing. So that for me was really, really, really important work. I mean, when you first suggested, I was like, but the more you began to explain your project and what it is you were doing, I was like, yes. At what point do feminist elders recognize themselves and give ourselves that credit? You know? So that's what, I guess, the work means to me. The WCCR, and we'll probably get into it, I think meant everything for my intellectual work. You know, when I started it, I thought of it as a study group, because you know how we were. We were these black women at UCT, and we were the one black woman per department, except you people in English. There were 4 of you, I think, 3 or 4, but you were the only people where you were actually a group. So I was slowly going crazy in the history department trying to write my thesis, and although my supervisor, Bill Nasson, was a black man, a Willie Barlam, but it's not like he got any of the stuff I was doing. I was a military historian. And, you know, and so I was just looking for support. And I said, well, we see each other, we walk past each other, you know, between BT and what is now AC Jordan Building, but do we ever really stop to talk? And do we stop to talk as black women? And that's when I started putting up pamphlets and leaflets and saying, oh, let's meet once a week. And it was really, now that I think of it, now that I look back, you know, like how in the village you all go to the river and you wash, but you also network. And it was just, well, can we create a networking space for 4 black women on campus? And that was really all for me, it was just, I mean, you know, as you know, our background was all these wild student struggles that had just come to an end as we're all sitting at UCT in the mid-90s. But for me, it was just a way of using the same techniques that have served us so well in the struggle but now it's an intellectual struggle.
Thank you. Thank you as well for seeing that context, which was so important. Was also going to be one of my questions. What was that setting at UCT? And since we have in the room also Pumla, who I will also point to as part of the leadership of the group. Pumla, I wonder if you would like to reflect on what the group means for you as well, from this vantage point.
Okay. Do I need the mic? Can you hear me, Gabeba?
Yes, I can, my darling.
Hello, darling. So I think that I'm just enjoying listening to you and Yvette, and now I have to speak. I didn't realize. I think part of I just want to echo what Yvette said, first of all, that we just did what I think at the time, we tried to create something that we needed, but I think we kind of thought about it as I mean, we were all kids, really, right? I mean, we were all graduate students and honors and masters and, you know, and we were, sorry, not honors, masters and PhDs, really. Yvette was PhD. I think most of us were masters, and you had just submitted your masters. And I think we kind of thought about it. We knew it wasn't just about survival, but I don't think we could have foreseen what it would mean in terms of our ability to build academic careers and intellectual lives and creative lives into the future. I think that, and I often say that I don't know that I would have had the kind of academic career that I've had I not had WCCR. And I think one of the main things that was important to us going in, and this is the last thing I'm going to say so that you two can speak more, is that the main thing that we kept saying in those first meetings, that Yvette kept saying and you kept saying, Gabeba especially, was that, we were, on the one hand, so many of us who joined that group, who became part of WCCR, had grown up in spaces in black spaces, right? Under apartheid, in exile, or just in black families in exile. Yvette, shame, was like the two families in Sweden in the 70s, but anyway. But I think that there was a way in which we could not accept the illegibility that we were being daily confronted with at UCT. And I think that had we maybe been raised differently, we would not have had the stubbornness. And so it was very clear to us something was interfering, because we would give presentations at our departments, which were supposed to be liberal. It was newly, a free South Africa, the thing that we've been raised our whole lives to look forward to and to know would happen. And it was suddenly here, and it was this incredibly gaslighting experience, because we were doing all of this work, and we knew something about the feedback we were getting and the interaction we were getting to our scholarship wasn't just about our scholarship. But we also understood that we needed critical engagement. I needed to know when I was doing sloppy work. But we knew, and I think we all did, and we understood that we wanted the hard conversations. And also, we were like very hardcore, because we are apartheid children, and so we were very able to deal with very aggressive feedback, even when it came from a good place, right? So we didn't have a problem with last thing I'm saying. But the point is, we wanted the hard feedback, but we wanted the hard feedback to be about the rigor. And we understood that we were not going to be able, not that we wouldn't get proper feedback, but we wouldn't be able to get it for ourselves. We wouldn't be able to sift through, on the one hand, the heavily white supremacist, patriarchal stuff that it came with, and the things we needed to listen to. And so we sought to become that for each other. And I think we've gained, and we know, you're not going to talk about it, but we didn't always get along and have a party, but I think that we gave each other the hard feedback that we needed. And I don't think we would have been the scholars we are if we didn't have those really hard conversations sometimes, which I sometimes worry are now missing, because everybody has to be soft.
I thank you both of these profoundly important women in my life, and scholars and feminist leaders for all of us, and leadership members of the WCCR. So I'm going to say a little bit more about this and draw on the strands of what both Yvette and Phumla have just said. To say that the WCCR is, from the research I have been able to conduct in archives at UCT, the first Black feminist collectivity established at UCT. And it contained members such as Yvette Abrams, who was the founder member, Dimitri Erasmus, who was the first convener and leader of this group, Phumla Dineo-Tola, what do I say about Phumla? Eminent sister, friend of us all, and Zini Magubane, Nokuthula Mazibuko, and Tabiseng Motsemi, profoundly important scholars and feminist figures who met one another as young scholars, beleaguered scholars, unrecognizable as scholars at the University of Cape Town and other universities, because it was not only a UCT group, it was in fact not even only a PhD and master's student group, it also included activists and artists who were not necessarily based at university. Desiree Lewis, Deirdre Prince, Joanne Prince, other members of the group which met in person once a month, and as Yvette and Uma both pointed out, we presented to one another our PhD chapters, the work that we were busy with. We gave one another feedback. We made possible the advancement of work that has gone on to become foundational feminist work of that period, and in fact of Black feminism in South Africa more generally. I think this idea of creating what we needed, creating what we knew we needed but did not exist, is a really important lesson that for me emerges from the WCCR, and that I hope that people are also hearing today in whatever context they are facing, that when you recognize something that is urgently necessary and does not exist, you create it collectively, and you make it work through your labor, through your commitment to one another, through your sustained effort and tenderness and care for one another, because that work is going to come back and circle and nourish you as much as it nourishes a broader feminist community. I want to give you one anecdote and then come back to the conversation with Yvette and Pumla. And that anecdote is that we held the first African Womanist conference on the continent. We held that in 1998. We established ourselves as a research group funded by the research office at UCT. We were a serious intellectual force at the university. We were also evicted from a venue at the university that we had booked for one of our monthly meetings. And a colleague from, this was in the AC Jordan building, then known as the Arts Block, a colleague from the English department entered that room while we were holding our meeting, looked at the group of Black women around the room holding our meeting and said, "Sorry, this room is needed for university business." Having looked at this group of women conducting intellectual work and not recognizing actually that this could be university business. So that lack of recognition obviously is something that we refused, and we are here. And we are the 5th anniversary of Afems, and 25 years after we had the first African Womanist conference held organized by the WCCR in 1998. And so I think it's a fitting time to think about recognition, to think about visibility, to think about the meaning of what we do with what seems at first to be small, fragile actions. I turn to Yvette and Pumla and to echo with them that without the WCCR, whenever something good happens to me in my life, if I'm writing a book or if I'm accepting some form of recognition, I come back to say thank you to the WCCR. Thank you for that beginning. And I wonder now if you can ask the two of you to just briefly comment on what you think of as the generational meaning of the WCCR and also of our silence. Can you reflect a little bit on why we were quiet, what we don't speak about, and what the WCCR might mean for other generations of Black feminist collectivities? Thank you, the two of you.
Well, I just want to acknowledge, I was saying last night that I'm really struggling with this whole iconicity thing, you know, to come back to academia and discover that I'm an icon is a very complex and fraught preoccupation of mine, but the bottom line is that icon, Dr. Yvette Abrams, would never have been Dr. Yvette Abrams if it wasn't for the WCCR. I mean, you can imagine you're sitting in the same room with people who today are the feminists. I mean, Elaine Salo, Mary Hames, Floretta Bonsai, Jude Clark, like, it just goes on and on, because like I said, women started coming from other universities. You know, I think at one stage you were 35 members on and off. And you cannot get away with sloppy thinking in the presence of these intellectual giants, right? You know, so I would get into the habit of, before I present a chapter to my supervisor, I'd bring it to the WCCR and people would then kindly tear it apart and put it back together again. So there are many sections of my thesis that, okay, this brain wrote and this hand thought. But if we had to sit down and try and figure who came up with that first, we would really be hard put to, you know, many of the themes, I mean, in both your work and in my work, were things that we discussed in depth in the WCCR. So in that sense, you know, it was really important. But also that it was an activist space. I mean, that conference in 1998, I can remember writing the funding, and we got funding through the history department. But then when they discovered it's a black women only work, they said, no, we can't fund you because that is racist. I mean, UCT really did not know how to deal with our blackness. You know, and Mafeda Pumla always used to insist that we need to occupy space. So we'd go sit in the sports center on a Friday afternoon and really just drink Coke or tea. But, you know, how people would furry because we're the only table of black women in the room. So these kind of very subtle subversions, as much as the intellectual battles, were really important. And the silences, I think, like I said, you know, it's not, the struggle is not over. We've just all been incredibly, some of us have written 7 books, some of us have become award-winning poets, you know, they're students. So that's why I say it's really, I don't think of it as a deliberate silence. I think of it, we've just been busier now, we're coming into our own as feminist elders. But, I mean, one of the things I would say is I really found it an incredible space for conflict resolution. And you know we had these deep, deep conflicts. I mean, for one thing, we were multidisciplinary. So I come as an historian, and I sit in this space with like 4 literary critics. Like, if my English is not perfect, it's through no fault of yours. You know? And I mean, I'm sitting with somebody who's writing about Staff Rider. I could not be fluffy on my black consciousness analysis because, you know, I would be corrected with a quote from Staff Rider. It was like that. So you know, I couldn't help but become brilliant because I'm sitting in this company. And so one of the silences I would like to interrogate, you know, the relationship between individual and community, and how important it was that we created a black feminist collectivity. The importance of because, you know, I give a lot of thought to what are the conditions for free black thought. And I do think, you know, from this individualistic Western model, that we need to look a lot more at what does an intellectual community do for us. So those are the interesting questions that I would, you know, like to look at. Or I'd like you to look at, because you're writing this.
All of us.
So I'm going to stand because I want Gabeba to see me, so that's the only way I stand. So I have a different position from Yvette around the silence.
See? Conflict all the time.
I think that, I think there's 2 reasons for the silence, not discounting what Yvette is saying. The first one is because of who we were, right, and who we are. So there's a sense in which, like, how the hell are you going to write about how you made history? Now, first of all, I don't think people walk around saying, oh, I made history. Like, you don't walk around with the sense of yourself as, and I started a thing. Yeah. I mean, some people do, but clearly we were not those people. We were, like, trying to do the thing, and we didn't, and then we did other things, and we still, so I think there's part of that. I don't think it's humility, right? So I don't think it's like, I think we were all such difficult black girls and then black women. I don't think we were bullied by the like, oh, don't, it wasn't that. It wasn't like that sense of like, don't blow yourself up. I think it was just like we were busy and we're still busy and it didn't occur to us. Like, you know what I mean? It's just part of our lives and we built the thing and it allowed us to do the things and we try to build and we've learned from that and we continue to, I think we're continuing to do WCCR work wherever we are. So it hasn't occurred to us. And I mean, I don't know why the historian and the historical sociologist amongst us have not insisted. But anyway, the rest of us, I think we just didn't. And then I think the second one is that, how do we speak about it? Because it's also, we created incredible things from the WCCR, but we created other things that we didn't want to create. And there's a cost. There's a big cost to some of the things we created, and because we were so BC says sometimes you disengage. And that disengagement is illegible often, right? Like we're human beings. And it's great to have this stuff and to create all these things, but you're a human being. And one of the things that unfortunately, that we didn't, it's not what we were creating, we're trying to create the opposite, is that as we rose, we then became the people in the departments, right? But we were the only, and then we had to be the person that held, and of course we wanted to do that, but then we became the default super mother, super everybody, and so all the work became ours. And I don't think it's an accident that you and Yvette have had concussions and I have endless scans and they still can't figure out what is wrong with me, but there is, you know what I mean? And so I think there's a cost to the labor, the emotional labor that is demand, I mean, we do it. But there's also incredibly untenable neoliberal demands on our perpetual availability. And I think it's just like we're exhausted and we're human beings and we have our own things that we're doing. Like we have lives. Like it's not like we're not walking around, I'm an icon. Nobody is an icon. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Nobody's interested in that. We were never interested in that, right? But what it comes with is like, why didn't Gabeba? Where's Gabeba on this? Yvette, I went to the thing. Why is Yvette there? Not, we can't be everywhere because we're human beings. And it's a lot of labor. And we're not infinite. And so we do a thing that politically is in line with our politics. Sometimes we withdraw, but then we get punished for that withdrawal as well, because how dare we not be available all the time to everybody, to speak on absolutely everything all the time, because that's what we exist for. And quite frankly, I am incandescent with rage. Incandescent with rage. And so I think that's the silence. I don't think that I'm the only one who's incandescent with rage. I am incandescent with rage with the absolute, because it's ironically, you do this black feminist work, and people say, oh, you're an icon, but you're also being gaslit and getting like bullets sent to you all the time, and you're supposed to come out and be like, it's so lovely being Gabeba Baderoon, the biggest genius of all the geniuses. Like, no. So that's my thing. And I probably wouldn't say it if I wasn't at Afems, but
Thank you. Gabeba, we have 5 minutes left before our next event, which is 1:15. And so what I'd like to ask, and it's such a tragedy to even end this conversation, we could go on for another hour, but perhaps if you give a rounding off kind of something, and each of you do that, and then if we can open it to the floor for 1 or 2 questions, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to, just really convey my thanks to both of you for enriching my own thinking, which has been, grappling with the meaning of this group. I do feel that the fact that it exists is a nourishing part of a collective Black feminist history, particularly in a place like UCT, which struggles with recognition of that. So the sheer substance and the weight and the significance of the WCCR feels to me very important to register. The subtleties and the nuances that both of you have brought up, I think are part of why I treasure this work. And I hope that the work that I am doing, it certainly will not be the only work, but I hope it will at least reflect a little bit of the power that both of you have brought as leaders, Yvette as founder and Pumla as the person who took us online. And that it is in that incarnation that the WCCR continues to meet today. So I think just in terms of intellectual history and feminist history, this is important work. This conversation is important work. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you. And Pumla, you're absolutely right. In fact, Gabeba will tell you the first time she suggested this, I said, oh, but you can't do it at the San and Koi Center because I can't be seen to supporting work of which I am a part. I mean, it sounds like the kind of nepotism we're trying to move away from. And I refused. And she had to come back and in her own way gently persuade me many months later to actually see the value of it. So yes, but touching on the deeper issues, and I think tying together the two papers, I totally agree with you. You know, there's many times where I had to say, no, I am not going to be the mother of the nation. Look how they treated Umama. Do I look like a fool? I'm going to set myself up for that. Sorry, I'm the lesbian auntie, okay? Just get that straight. I refuse to mother you because not everybody who comes to us is healed. And not everybody who comes to us is liberated. And for me to explain, no is a feminist choice. No, I'm not doing that lecture. No, I'm not attending that seminar. No, I'm not taking on that student. It's okay. But it has to do with this historical moment of being mired in a particular model of revolutionary motherhood. And to conduct scholarship to say, well, you know, did it really work for our predecessors? And how's that supposed to work for us? So those, I think, are deeper questions that ties this WCCR work to a broader feminist history. So I'm going to leave it at that. But as you can see, our methodology, how we have ways of disagreeing with each other, and for me, it's one of the really enduring legacies, you know, but it enriches our intellectual work. We're not afraid, we are not fluffy feminists. Let me put it that way.
No, we're not fluffy, and we're very aggressive. In only the way sometimes are legible to only WCCR people. So, like, you know, sometimes like love each other by force. But the person understands the language, so that's the nice thing. I just want to also say to you, Yvette, and Gabeba specifically, and I know that, I mean, I think we would have become academics and we'd be senior, and we would have done the PhDs anyway, right? We would have done the work. We know we're just those people. We would have done it. But I know at 50 that I don't know that I would be, I don't know that we would all be alive without the WCCR. In fact, I'm pretty sure that, not pretty sure, I know for a fact that one of the things that have kept me alive, outside of my personal life, well, my friends and my family in my personal life. Because they're trying to kill me. What I'm doing in my personal life. But anyway, is the WCC, is what the WCCR continues to give me. So it's in the past, but it's also not. And I think that not just intellectually, but just also in terms, yes, intellectually in many ways, in terms of how to be a scholar, in terms of how to, even that ability, even with the incandescent rage, to be able to say no and to pull back and to know that it's not me, that I'm not the problem. And so what I feel is daily enormous gratitude and love for the women of the WCCR and the work of the WCCR and the archive and your presence. And so even if I don't speak to you every day, I live with you every day. And there is never a moment, even when one of you is working on my nerves, because at any point, one of you is working on, I'm the most irritable in the group. At some point, Gabeba doesn't really irritate, except when she collects people. Yvette and I sometimes irritate each other, but from love.
I love you too.
Even when one of you is working on my nerves, there's always love and enormous gratitude. And so, and every moment of my work, you are there with me. And that is a gift that I don't take for granted. So,
We are officially out of time. Can I put pressure on one of the organizers and ask if we can have another 3 minutes? 5 minutes, great. Okay, think about your questions. They've got to count, okay? Thank you, one there, one there, one there. Let's take 3 and let's see how it goes.
Okay, so have you ever had a moment where it almost fell apart?
Yeah.
And so I want to know what's been the thread that's kept you guys together through the years.
Okay, hang on to that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and that's beautiful because what I'm going to talk about is something that we started last year. So when I got to Rhodes, I started a study that has got intersectionality. I was coming from Nelson Mandela University. So at Nelson Mandela University, there's a beautiful community of young African feminists. Then I got to Rhodes, people are working in silos, but there's still, African feminists in the space. So we started a group called the Intersectionality Reading Group. And then we started having sessions where we discuss our work. But something that came out prevalent from that session was that the black women that were in the group needed a space to breathe, outside of a space to discuss their scholarship.
Yeah.
They even said they need a space where they can take off their bras. And it was quite interesting because as I went to the field, I realized that as a young black woman entering a space where you are researching yourself, there's quite a lot that can cause you to be stuck in that field emotionally. Yeah. And needing a community to step out of the field and represent the stories that you are researching, including your own. So those debrief spaces that young black people need. And this conversation comes exactly at the point where we are trying to start again another community that looks like that. Because I believe this is the reason why a lot of black women actually leave academia, because there's a lot of demands that are formally and systematic, but there's also a lot of demands, which is the emotional labor that we're doing in our research. So how do we then strike that balance, engaging into scholarship and being deliberate on who we bring in our PhD projects in that conversation, at the same time finding ways of healing so that we don't transfer the trauma of systematic erasure into the other young black African feminists now coming.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for speaking, for sharing where you are and what you've been through. I think what's petrifying for me is that I'm 29 years old and I can relate to your story in my current workplace, which makes me very unhappy. Because from listening to you, I understand that you have done a shitload of work just for yourselves, and then obviously without the intention to become icons, you have actually done it for us too. I need to know, what can you tell those of us who find ourselves in our spaces now, almost 30 years post-apartheid, I'm a 94 baby, so really almost 30 years post-apartheid, and going through what you went through, and trying to embark on this journey of being scholars, and there being so few of us. Once again, it's very scary to hear you say, there's only one of you, there was only two of you, you're the first little group of, that's insane. But how can we contribute to making, to continuing in that change, and what are the mistakes you might have made that we can learn from, to not delay our process in moving this thing further, so those that are coming after us don't have to step into the potholes we had to.
Thank you. Let's.
Can I only answer one question? No, you start, Gabeba. But okay, no, I'm going to answer this one because I know you two are going to answer it and you're going to complicate it. Did we, this is a much bigger question, and I want to, but I think I'll let them first, and then if they don't finish, then I'll play over. I'm scared of playing that, but. Did it ever almost fall apart? No. Were there moments, no, it never almost fell apart. Because it wasn't, we weren't going to let it fall apart. Did we have incredibly difficult, sometimes once we had I'm not going to give you the details, once we had some of us were in the middle of an 18-month-long fight. Sure. But we were not, and it didn't all end well. Some people, whatever, but we were not willing, and we were just not able to entertain the possibility of it falling apart. Yeah. But also, we were all raised in different ways by different parents with different politics in the kind of left spectrum. Well, I mean, one of us was not even in the left spectrum, and that was part of it. But anyway, but the point I'm making is that we were raised to understand conflict very differently than people understand conflict now. Mm-hmm. When I was in science school, fighting with your comrades was what you didn't. They weren't your friends. Mm-hmm. They weren't the people who were in your business. You didn't always even need to like them. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't have to like the people that you're trying to change the world with. You have to respect each other, and you have to recognize there's a politics in how you engage with each other. You don't have to like them. It's okay if you can't stand them personally, but that's why you don't take them to your house. That's why you don't cry in their arms. That's why you don't mess with their people, right? So for us, that was one of the things that we shared. There's comradeship, there's sisterhood, and sometimes it's friends. I mean, some of the people in WCCR are my closest friends for life. Yeah. And some people I like very much, but they're not my friends, and they're never going to be my friends. And one person I'm not even sure I like. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure 90% of the time I don't like that person. But I'm never going to tell you which one it is. Yeah. And I'm not, and the person continues. So this is all I'm saying. It's like you all, I'm old, ne? The nice thing about being our age is that we can say things like, you people all have to like each other all the time. It's hard because you're human. And just because you have fantastic politics doesn't mean, maybe you like some weird music that I really can't stand and you drive me crazy. It's okay. I think that one of the lessons is just fight for what's worth fighting for, learn how to fight, and try. It's the hardest thing in the world. Try to figure out how to learn to be nice to yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I'll go next and let Gabeba have the last word, since it's your paper. But just to follow up on what Pumla said, we didn't always like each other, but what united us was that we were activists, and that we identified intellectual work as a terrain of struggle. So we came with that purpose. And I think along the way deflected a lot of notions around femininity. Like Pumla would say, why the hell must I always be nice? Well, yeah, actually, why do you? It's okay. And to think of, these were real and legitimate and important conflicts. Were we feminists first and black second? No, says Pumla, because we knew we were black before we knew we were women. Okay, these are important things that have laid the foundation for South African black feminism today. So in that kind of context, whether we get along or both was for us really less relevant. But of course, the answer also, like I say, we had really emotionally wise people. You know, I myself, I'm, you know, overdeveloped intellect and 2-year-old emotionalist. I'm not always the most tactful of people, but we had darling Gabeba. I remember Dissident Lewis as being a big emotional social worker. We, like I said, we had Jude, we had Florette, we had people who were studying these things. And so they managed to mediate between, okay, we're not going to be nice black women, but you know, people who were bitching or backbiting or jealous or pull her down, they didn't last long in the WCCR. You know, because it was so fundamentally a movement of validating each other. You know, theoretically, probably what we should have done at UCT was to be running after those white patriarchs who were the key to power and prestige. We didn't have time for that. So other people who were not necessarily black feminists may have been doing, but we were not. And so that kind of conflict didn't enter into the WCCR. You couldn't get promoted, you couldn't get money, you couldn't get prestige. So we were in it for the thing. And I think that made a lot of, not saying, I mean, I'm sure I did my fair share of sucking up to my professor, but not in the WCCR, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you've got the substance of the answers to those necessary questions there. And good for continuing to try and to fail and to contemplate failure. Failing is very good. Please continue to do that. Be brave. And hold in mind that whenever you yourself personally are cracking and fracturing, it's the collectivity that's going to hold you. And so put in the work into the collectivity. The work is also tenderness and also care for yourself. Also know your boundaries. That collectivity, as Pumla said, literally saved my life, inspired me, gave me a path, gave me things that I cherish my entire existence. And those two women over there are those things that I cherish. So thank you for the chance for this conversation.
Thank you. Well, thank you very, very much, Gabeba, Yvette, Pumla. Thank you for sharing with us. And I think we do have a lot to learn here, and there are a lot more conversations. We can't carry on with the conversation now, but there's lunch coming up, there's the whole afternoon, and there's tonight. So let us keep the conversation going. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, people.
I like torture review. It's my favorite thing. That's interesting.